All right, we are live, and hopefully, we are actually live on YouTube. I'm not seeing it refreshing. Okay, I see myself now. Good to see everybody here. I wanted to take an opportunity, as I mentioned in the previous episode that we did. If you haven't seen it, it'll be somewhere on the top right or top right of Solomon's head, and I'll try to remember to put a link in there after the fact. But I wanted to focus specifically on all of you and questions that you might have. Now, as such, I never know how busy it's going to be. So it helps me a lot, especially when you're talking amongst each other, to actually say question with the question or a Q colon and a question or something like that. I obviously, depending on how many come in, I won't necessarily be able to get to them, but I don't know if everybody has had an opportunity to actually get questions answered. And that's why I wanted to do this. A lot of you have watched the full trial. You probably have questions about the trial. And I want to give you an opportunity to get those questions in. In short, though, I should probably introduce my guest is Solomon Anderson, who has the unfortunate misfortune, if you will, of his brother is been sentenced for murder and I guess life in prison.
That's right. I mean, he got 50 years, but he's already 43. They started the count when he was 39, so they say 89 years old by the time he would be eligible for parole, which is, at that point already end of life, and there's a maximum statutory limit for how long to keep somebody in prison anyway. So it's pretty much moot.
Okay, so yeah, essentially, there we go. And where we left off in the previous episode is we talked a lot about their relationship, what was going on in their lives, and everything leading up to the crime.
Hmm.
And we left off because I felt like, let me get the questions in because everybody watched the trial, or many did. Let's go to it though while I wait for other questions to come in. I see that there's one here from Gone Jerry, and oh, there's another one here. Good. Essentially, there was a mistrial, from what I understand. So there was two trials. Can you tell me why there was two trials? What happened here?
So there was a mistrial in that was March of 2022. So a little over a year before the trial took place, and that was because it was effectively a Brady violation. The prosecutor dumped a bunch of discovery on the defense, literally the right before the weekend before jury selection. So it was either the Thursday or the Friday before jury selection, and then submitted new evidence to the court during opening statements and made himself a witness in the case. So because of that, then the defense, in the state of Wisconsin, there's no ambush tactics allowed, so everything was supposed to be disclosed leading into the trial. The defense actually pushed for mistrial because of it, because they had not been prepared for the information that he presented and the information that they had given literally the week before. So there were a few reasons behind that. Unfortunately, following that mistrial, then Bruce Schrader was injured, and then it was a whole bunch of other complications last fall.
Okay, and Bruce Schrader is the judge, Judge Schrader.
Yeah, Judge Schrader. Yeah, Judge Bruce Schrader.
Okay.
So he was injured sometime last summer, so roughly a year ago. He took a fall, something like that. He's walking with a cane now and has a pretty massive scar on the side of his head,
Hmm.
which, to my understanding, wasn't there before. So he was still in recovery last September and October when they had scheduled the trial again, the retrial, um, and then that was effectively just postponed indefinitely at that time because of the judge's injury,
Hmm.
and then they pushed for a habeas corpus, because you can't just indefinitely postpone a trial, um, and then I believe it was actually Wilkie was the judge that sat on the habeas corpus. I have to look back at the CCAP, but the Chief Justice actually recused himself from it, and then Wilkie made a decision, even though he also had a personal connection to the missing person and or some of the witnesses,
Mhm.
and was supposed to recuse himself as well. So Wilkie made the decision to deny the habeas corpus after a last minute behind the door meeting between Bruce Schrader, him, and the prosecutor to try and get anything into the court to prevent it. And that's effectively what happened. They denied his habeas corpus, and they denied the change of venue because of it. Even though they did request a change of venue, because if you can't find a judge that isn't personally connected to the case in the entire district, then why is he being tried in that district? That sounds like you're drinking from a poisoned well.
Okay, now just so I saw it coming up, that is the judge from Kyle Rittenhouse that a lot of people do recognize,
Yeah, Bruce Schrader is Rittenhouse's judge. That's correct.
and was Zach locked up that whole time?
Yeah, yeah. Zach was arrested in May of 2020 and spent the entire time in jail. He's not been a free man since.
Okay, so now I've got some of the questions coming in here. Um, why do you think Detective, is it Anschutz or
Anschutz,
Anschutz?
Anschutz
Okay,
or Anschutz, yeah.
skipped town before the defense could call him back to the stand?
Well, he claims that his daughter had a volleyball game out of town or something like that. That's why he missed just the Monday that he was supposed to be called to the stand. Um, so the defense wasn't able to call him back to the stand, unfortunately. So
So a
there's
volleyball game takes priority over
Yep,
trial.
apparently. So even though he was one of the key detectives in this trial, and he knew that he was on the witness list, he still left town conveniently, knowing that the defense was going to be calling witnesses the following week,
Hmm.
and wasn't allowed or wasn't available to give any sort of testimony about anything that he might have investigated himself or anything that was called into question, and then
So he wasn't crossed?
nope. Well, he was crossed during when the prosecutor called him up.
Mhm.
Then he was cross-examined, you know, and then rebutted. So all of that happened during the prosecutor's case, but during the defense's case, they weren't able to call him to the stand to then again impeach his credibility and or verify other information that had come to the court's attention during the trial. I believe that one of the things that he was going to be called to testify about, which was the stipulation that was read in the courtroom, was that there was never ever any evidence found of any gun, pistol, firearm whatsoever that was connected to my brother or this case. At least not in the state of Wisconsin, was the stipulation, to my understanding. So in that was one of the things that they wanted to bring him onto the stand and talk about. But the impact of a stipulation read to the jury is so minimal compared to actually having someone get cross-examined.
Interesting. All right. Why did the first judge have to recuse himself?
Well, the first judge was Bruce Schrader, and he didn't have to recuse himself. He was injured, but
Oh, okay.
but
Fair enough.
then the other judges that were in the second district that could have actually tried the case weren't able to. They were forced to recuse themselves because people worked for the court that were witnesses in the case. Because Rosalio himself, to my understanding, was like a court servicer, so he would serve subpoenas and do things like that for the court, and had known multiple people, including the prosecution, prior to his disappearance. So
Now,
with
this
this,
is the felon, Rosalie.
Rosalio, he had was he a felon? He had bail jumping. I don't remember if there was a drop
I guess
domestic
he wasn't
violence
convicted.
and
Okay.
something else. So he had a laundry list of things. A lot of it was financial. He had child support arrears and all kinds of stuff. So there was a bunch of issues that were kind of on his CCAP, but I'm not sure what he's all ever been charged with. I saw some minor traffic things and stuff like that on his CCAP, but a lot of financial issues. But he, to my understanding, was well connected with the courthouse in Kenosha, and therefore the rest of the judges in the courthouse. So that was
Hmm.
unfortunately one of the reasons why the judges all had to recuse themselves.
And it could have affected the tone overall, even if he
Absolutely,
wasn't in there. Okay.
100%. There's no question about it. That's why they want to change a venue. How can you get a fair trial in a courthouse where they have such an intimate relationship or an emotional investment in trying to see whoever is accused put behind bars?
Okay. Dragonfly Lady, why wasn't the family court, or why weren't the family court issues brought up in Zach's trial? They allowed everything else that wasn't relevant. Or we can't
Unfortunately,
determine relevance, but
yeah, exactly. It's not us up to us. That was actually up to Schrader to be the gatekeeper on evidence, and if they refused to allow the family court issues because it was a separate court case and considered maybe another act or something like that, or to protect the children, they wouldn't bring in things that would be damaging to the children, into a public court case like that.
okay. And which state? Now, by the way, I brought this up deliberately, even though we've already said Wisconsin. I only
Mhm.
brought it up so I could say that if I see a question and it's been answered, I'm going to skip over the question, not even bring it up. It's nothing personal. I just want to make sure that we keep covering. And it seems redundant if I have to ask a question that's been answered by the chat or you. If you had if you had been asked to be a witness, what do you think you would have been able to clear up on the stand?
I mean, I would have been at least a solid character witness for Zach. I mean, he's never been a monster. It's not what the way they assassinated his character in the courtroom was dishonest. It was disingenuous to who he is. I've said repeatedly, my brother's not a perfect human being by any stretch of the imagination. No one is. But the reality is that he wasn't the type of person to commit this crime. There were things that I was witness to, like just how much of my dumpster they had dumped out, even searching for evidence like the carpeting, and things like that. There were maybe some other issues that I might have been able to answer some questions about, like our discussions about the GPS tracker and things like that. Those would have been very personal, very direct discussions about exactly what I was familiar with, why that $50,000 was in his house, all of those things that were part of my brother and my discussions and how we were business planning and things like that. So I would have absolutely have testified on all that, and I think that would have been valuable for the court to have heard.
Okay. No. Um, Question: can you tell us about some of the pretrial motions that were denied?
We talked a little bit about the habeas corpus when the judge was injured and they had delayed the court date indefinitely, and then there was a bunch of jockeying. That's I believe when the prosecutor Michael Gravely had stated that he had a personal vested interest in making sure that my brother stayed in jail. Uh, and when a prosecutor is saying that he has a personal interest in making sure the accused stays in jail, that raises a red flag
Did he
to
actually
us.
state that
To my understanding, yeah, those are his words. That he had
on
personal
the
interest.
record anywhere?
I have to find the transcripts and I'll be able to confirm that, but to my understanding, that was what he said.
Interesting.
So it's hearsay from me technically because I had heard it,
Mhm.
um, firsthand from my brother, but it's still a family member that a prosecutor is talking about his personal interest in trying to keep a man in jail when they violated his constitutional right to a speedy trial. That's alarming. That should give us all a little bit of pause. There were also motions, a lot of motions that were put in place about getting the prosecutor removed because he had made himself a witness. That was denied. There were some hearings about just the discussion of
Had the prosecutor worked with Rosalio?
I believe so, but I don't know for sure. So to my understanding, yes, that he was in the courtroom, and if people out there have witnessed it or have firsthand account of it, I'd love for them to come forward. But
Because if judges recuse themselves on that account, then
exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Let me see. Next up,
there was also the motion for the Denny motion that was denied, and I've talked about that a little bit. Now, Denny motion
was
of the
that
state of Wisconsin.
pre-trial or during?
It was pre-trial, so a Denny
Okay.
motion needs to be brought to the judge before the trial, and that is the state of Wisconsin. It's the state of Wisconsin versus Denny, which is, I believe, a 1984 case that provides kind of an outline of what you need to do to bring a finger point accusation of someone else that could have been the perpetrator in before the court, and Bruce Schrader had denied that as well, even though they provided means, opportunity, and motive for Michael Campbell to have committed the crime. So it was odd in from our point of view for the denial of it. It's very specifically one of the best ways to get a not guilty verdict in a situation where you're accused of murder is that you provide to the court an example of someone that could have perpetrated the crime that wasn't the accused. And so the denial of this circumstance is cutting the legs out from underneath the defense.
Did Mike Campbell also work with the courts?
I'm not sure. His relationship with Detective Carrera was a little bit alarming as it was presented during the courtroom
And
or
what
during
was
the court
that?
proceedings. He was like he was on almost first name basis with Detective Carrera. Carrera specifically told him when he showed up to the crime scene to not get involved in the investigation, and then Michael called Carrera to their testimony after he left my brother's, after he interfered with the police investigation. And after interfering with a police investigation, Michael gravely described his illegal act, his crime, as an act of heroism to the court in that hearing, which is also alarming that the prosecutor is describing a crime as an act of heroism in interfering with a police investigation. And again, as a family, we're looking at that going, what is happening here? Why is this all working sort of hand in hand, like like they're trying to wash each other's backs?
Okay, I'm only asking because I forgot. For some reason, I mixed them up. I did send you a picture of a mugshot of Michael Campbell
Yeah,
offline,
that was
and
him. Yeah,
is it possible? And I'm throwing it out there because I have no idea. Literally, was he an informant?
it's possible.
Which would imply a relationship, possibly too. I don't know. It's something you could look
Yeah,
into, but I'll
yeah.
go back to the questions.
It's possible. I don't know if they release that kind of information to the public. I feel like that would be something that you'd have to have an investigator dig up.
Well, sometimes if people have records and they're on a near first name basis, then there could be a
Yeah.
relationship. If so, what kind of relationship would that be? Often cops will work with certain members who have committed crimes to get information. So
That's right. Yeah, and he's got a history. So does Erica Saylor. There's some stuff that
where did
he and his
Erica work?
Erica's his girlfriend
But where
or
did
his
she work?
ex-girlfriend. I'm not sure where she worked. If she worked at the arborist company or what her job was,
Okay.
but she was the one that she testified to have given Brandon Hendrickson and Michael Campbell my brother's name and address based on conversations that she had um, Rosalio's ex. Um, I keep forgetting her name.
Okay.
Eileen Knoll. Eileen Knoll.
All right, so let me go on to El Murillo 7. The 2 beer bottles never tested. Are they still available to test?
I believe that they're in the evidence, but again, I don't have the discovery to tell you whether or not they are. To my understanding, they were taken into evidence, but there was, I think, some empties in the trash that were not taken into evidence, to my understanding. But again, I would have to look at the crime scene photos and the inventory of what was taken. with the discovery.
Okay. And I don't remember. There was a question I asked you during our interview, and I think you answered that you would have to. I think it was about the arrest report. That's what. When it went down on Christmas or somewhere near then, I asked if, in fact, the police report said that Sadie, is it Sadie?
Sadie, yeah.
Yeah. If Sadie was the aggressor in the confrontation, and you said something about your brother would have to sign a release or something for you to be able to see that. Have you ever explored this while you're out here fighting to, coordinate better to where you can answer a question like that, getting a release?
I mean, I would love to be able to get it. It's technically an other acts event, so I don't know that that it will be in the discovery at all. So that's um, it's really hard to say on whether or not I can get it because I'm not an acting party and I'm not his representation, and I'm not sure with whether or not it's even going to be in the discovery because it was a previous incident that occurred between the two of them, and Sadie was never investigated. So that would be with the Germantown Police Department. I might be able to put in for a public records request, but
You might
um,
want to consider it. And the only reason is that, especially if it's not directly related, because it's kind of mentally related to
right,
people who are looking at this, a pattern of behavior was supposedly established, then I would think you would want to explore everything that you can and share out an alternative narrative to what happened.
yeah, no, absolutely.
Um, Let me see. M. Shannon, did Zach want a speedy trial?
Of course, he wanted a speedy trial. Absolutely, he wanted this to be over in 2020, but with the volume of information that they had provided for the lawyers to dig through, they ended up continuing to push the trial date out because they had, you know, thousands and thousands of pages. I mean, the discovery is I think around 2 terabytes. So like, think of how much information that is between videos, from surveillance footage, the stuff on my brother's computer, all the search information, all the cell phone data, all the pictures, everything that they had seized from all the different crime scenes or all the different
Mhm.
search warrants, because they searched his house, they searched the tree farm multiple times, they searched Harrington Beach State Park, they searched the job site in Belgium. They had so many different crime scenes that they had worked. They had sent dive teams out. It was 15 different law enforcement agencies that were involved with this investigation, which is thousands and thousands and thousands of pages of deposition.
All right. And by the way, and I hate to crap on a point, but 2 terabytes isn't as much as you think. I've got, nearly 2 terabytes filled with just episodes that I'm doing here. If footage is high resolution, then, there's 100 gig that can be taken up depending on how much, space they take at high quality filming and things like that.
Yeah, but
But
most of it is documentation. It's not like
sure.
it's 2 terabytes of like video and sound footage. I mean, just
Mhm.
just to be clear, like it's a lot. I mean, think of how much it is to condense a book onto
No,
numerous
I know
incidents.
that.
So
I work in it, but I'm just pointing it out, especially
yeah,
too when you consider all the internet debris that you're picking up. And if you go on your computer right now, I don't know how much you're using up, but I'm sure when they took his computers and his phones and all that, they
mm,
took 100% of the hard drive. They did not selectively say, "Oh, well, we're only going to pull the email." No, they pulled the whole drive, and
yeah,
all that adds up quicker than you realize.
yeah. And I mean, they probably compacted a lot of that stuff into zip files and stuff like that too. But I'll find out when I get it. I just know that it's at
Mhm.
least at least that big in what in evidence that I know of so far, and all the police reports and everything else that they have to go through, and interrogation footage and all that stuff.
All right, let me see. Do you think Detective Anschutz, I don't know, Anschutz, sorry,
On
was
yeah,
it was encouraged to leave town by Gravely?
I mean, I don't have proof, but I mean, I can opine. Yeah,
Probably wasn't discouraged.
yeah.
We'll
I I
say that.
mean, I mean, he was definitely not told that he was going to be called by Gravely at the very least, and told that it was likely that he was going to be called on that Monday, and he should stick around. So even if he skirted around the fact that maybe he didn't tell him specifically to leave town, but he definitely didn't, tell him to stay.
Didn't they? And I didn't watch the trial, so didn't they announce who the witnesses were going to be on the close of the day? Because I know, watching Schrader in the past and watching Rittenhouse, that typically as he wrapped up on the day, he would say, okay, so we're going to wrap up today. The jury's out of the room. Who are you going to be calling? And then they say, we're planning to call blah, 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 blah. Do you recall if the defense stated that they were going to be calling him on that Friday before? Because I think that's significant.
I don't recall if they had stated specifically on the Friday before. I would have to go back and watch the footage, but it's a good point.
It would be worth
Uh,
doing, just because if they did state the intention of doing it in the courtroom, then the judge would have known, the prosecution would have known, it would have been, to all people involved, other than the jury. And maybe, I don't know, maybe that might be relevant in an appeal if there was a conflict. So
yeah.
Good. Probably the biggest question: how is Zach doing? We all worry and care about him. No innocent man should have to be locked up.
Well, he's miserable. I mean, what do you expect? He's he's in prison. He's in the holding. He's in a time period that is holding, waiting for placement.
Is
So
he still in jail then
no,
versus a state
he's
prison?
in the state prison, but
Okay.
he's waiting for placement. So the placement officers need to work through all the different cases and all the things that they have to do, all the responsibilities that they have to deal with. But then they have to they have to categorize and place all the inmates that are on intake to their home facility, wherever that's going to be. But in this intake program, or in this intake time period, they say it takes about 8 weeks, but it's to what he's told me, it's been taking 12. So from when he was transferred, which is I think about 3 weeks ago now, we're counting out like 12 weeks, so like 3 months that he's in this, and there's maybe one phone call a day. He doesn't have access really to the internet. He's got like 40 minutes a week that he can go and access the law library. It's almost nothing. Otherwise, it's mostly a lockdown. He doesn't have like cards available. The commissary is sold out of just about everything that he needs, including letters, envelopes, and things that he could utilize for writing and corresponding with people. So there's a lot of issues with this stage of his incarceration that make him completely and utterly miserable. There's no question about it. And I mean, he's innocent. He's maintained his innocence the entire time, and he has no access to, like, no texting program, no tablet, nothing like that. So even the people that are using the application, it actually still gets sent to Maryland, where it gets processed before it's then sent to him at the facility in Wisconsin. So it takes somewhere between 2 and 2.5 weeks for them to process all incoming mail and then send him whatever copies that they're going to provide. He did say that they're color copies at least, but the reality is that he's still getting a copy of it, and it's miserable. It's
So
very boring.
you're not able to visit him? Nobody.
Not in person, only video visit, and I have to be cleared by some of their officers. I have to fill out paperwork and submit that to the prison, and only immediate family members are allowed to do that. And it still takes them time to process that paperwork before they even grant you access to video visit. And even that, like I said, that he gets maybe one phone call a day. They're not guaranteed. I think federally is what he had told me. One of the guards had told him was that federally they're only guaranteed one phone call a month, so they're lucky that they get what they get.
Well, unless they're Elizabeth Holmes, who went in and 4 days later was walking around the prison with her family. So I don't know. I mean, it seems like there are people who do get that benefit. I
Yeah.
find that very curious. Let me see, Dragonfly Lady. Is there any reason that you could share as to why there wasn't a complete gag order instead of a gag order placed on specific individuals? Isn't that bias?
Well, I mean, they wanted to try and prevent, any tampering with evidence or anything like that. That was the logic. So they had opined that Sadie was a victim, and they wanted a gag order between Zach and Sadie, and that at least my niece was a victim or somehow related, and so they didn't want my brother to have access to my niece to influence her as a witness, which is what I believe Gabrielle, the former ADA, had stated in
On
one of
that
the
note,
hearings.
because it did come up, and I've heard that there was a claim that he was trying to influence her while she was on the stand.
Yeah, that was false. That was a fabrication. So my niece was mouthing, trying to speak with him uh, in between questions. So the lawyer would ask a question, and then there would be a pause where they check their notes or whatever it was, and they'd look down or look away,
Yeah.
and then in between those questions, she would like try and lean over towards him or turn towards him and mouth to him, trying to say things to him, trying to ask things, and uh, and then. Uh, and then at a certain point, because she kept doing it, he was trying to get his lawyer to say something, but they weren't, it wasn't the proper time, or they weren't taking the opportunity to do it, and so he couldn't stop himself from being a dad. He literally just was telling her that she was misbehaving, that she needed to stop trying to speak directly to him. It's the same way that Sadie and her family were signing, messaging, mouthing from the gallery to calm down when she had meltdowns on the stand. It was just parents being parents. It had nothing to do with what she was saying. She was free to say whatever she wanted. She clearly said whatever she wanted on the stand, and that was just a fabrication.
Has anybody addressed that with the press? And I think Law and Crime harped on it. I think there was a few people that really made some hay out of that.
I
That
mean,
is,
Law and Crime did. I did an interview with them for their TV show. What is it? Killer Cases.
mhm.
It's supposed to air somewhere around the end of the year, and I had talked about that during that interview. But nobody has released any sort of correction to that fabrication. Nobody has apologized for it. They don't care. They got their clickbait.
Okay. Um, Peggy Reardon, right to the point. Why specifically do you feel he's innocent? I know why I think he's innocent, but I'm interested in your reasons.
Multiple reasons. And so he was charged with 4 crimes. So out of 4 different counts, one of them was homicide. Another one was the hiding of a corpse. Right. So those are tied together. So if he
Mhm.
never committed the homicide, he never hit a corpse. The other 2 were 2 counts of stalking. Now, very specifically, the homicide wasn't possible physically, especially based on the timeline presented by the state. The state presumes that he had somewhere around 10 to 15 minutes, give or take, to commit a murder, wrap up a body, put it in his van, clean up the crime scene, stash the phone in the freezer with the credit cards, rob the guy, leave the wallet on the couch. That included moving furniture carefully and all that other stuff. So that's the bludgeoning, that's the murder, that's the carrying of the corpse. That's all of those things. Physically, not possible. Furthermore, they also allege that when the phone went in the freezer and changed positions at 10:10 p.m., then he left immediately and drove to Mequon to make it there by 11:19 p.m. to then text and call his girlfriend Christine Remsburg, and apologize for oversleeping for their date that evening.
You
It
said phone went into the freezer?
Yeah, so Rosalie Gutierrez's phone was discovered in the freezer by Rosalio's mother when she was cleaning the apartment out, around the 21st or the 24th of April, or of May of 2020. So it was found after the fact. She
Mhm.
called the police. The police came. They took the phone. They tested it for DNA actually, and on that phone they found two DNA alleles that had a 0% match to my brother. So we have exculpatory evidence on that cell phone that indicates that someone other than my brother handled that cell phone, and that my brother absolutely did not handle that cell phone. So exculpatory evidence found on that specifically. Furthermore, the amount of time that it takes to drive from Kenosha to Mequon is an hour 7, hour 9 minutes, depending on what route you take, and that doesn't count construction, and it doesn't actually take into account the amount of time that it would take to avoid all traffic cameras on the most likely paths that the police had watched footage on. So it was not physically possible for him to commit the crime in the time frame that the state alleged, especially in their closing arguments when they claimed that all of this occurred. Furthermore, they never found any murder weapon at all, no evidence of a murder weapon. They never found any cleanup evidence, no corroborating DNA, no corroborating evidence on any of my brother's properties or any properties that he was connected to. They found nothing. Not just like the hint of something, absolutely nothing. What they presented in the courtroom was a lot of evidence that had nothing to do with Rosalio's disappearance. However, they tried to spin it as something that he did to cover up a misdeed. Those things aren't connected. They never actually found evidence on anything in the burn pit. They never found any evidence at the tree farm. They never found any evidence at the job site. They never found it at Harrington Beach State Park. They didn't find anything of evidentiary value to Rosalio's disappearance other than the pinhead sized speck of DNA that they claim was in the back of his van. And that there's other rational, reasonable explanations for, including the fact that Rosalio's cell phone was actually marked at Zach's home when Zach wasn't there. So if you have a situation where the missing man was at his home, there is a possibility that he was going through my brother's minivan when it was parked in the driveway. There's also the possibility that transfer DNA, when Sadie had handled the children, Zach had handled the children, and then touched things in the back of the van, had then spread Rosalio's DNA in the back of the van. It is highly possible that it is transferred DNA, epithelial cell DNA. They
What
never
kind of,
tested it.
and it was blood for sure, or what was it?
No, no. The news released a bunch of bad information
Mhm.
based on what the prosecutor wanted spread. They claimed that it was blood, but there was no proof that it was blood. In fact, when they preemptively tested the entire van, there was not a single speck that lit up with luminol. Not a single speck in the entire van. Nowhere in the van lit up with luminol, which implies that there was no blood evidence in the van. And in fact, there was Julianne Avila, the crime lab analyst that found and swabbed that pinhead-sized speck. Very specifically stated that there was no evidence of blood in the van. This is really important because the public was lied to repeatedly about this. They opined that the quality of the specimen was very good, and therefore they believed that it was probably blood, but they had no proof that it was. Epithelial cells, as was testified to by multiple crime lab experts, can actually create a robust DNA profile. They
And that's
don't know.
skin cells.
That's skin cell, tissue
Thank you.
cells. But they didn't have any evidence or anything that they tested that specifically cited that it was blood or was epithelial cells. They claimed that the specimen wasn't large enough. We also don't have video footage or camera footage, no pictures taken of the process of collecting the sample or the specimen or testing it. So they had no footage of a specimen that they claimed was so small that it would be destroyed during the testing process, which is a big problem because the American Bar Association holds a standard that states that any specimen that would be destroyed in its testing should be recorded in every step or every stage of its collection through the testing process to make sure that there was no contamination or anything else that could have made the test go awry. And we don't have that to back it up. We have no idea that the machine was cleaned properly. We have no idea that, whether or not the swab or anything that was handled had cross-contaminated that swab. We don't know because they never actually recorded it, and it can't be retested to verify its accuracy because the specimen was so small. It's a huge problem with this single speck of DNA evidence. It doesn't make sense. Furthermore, we have a police officer that was on the crime scene that then went to my brother's house during the search and was there for when the van was open at one point in time. That was, matter of factly, Detective Anschutz that responded to my brother's property. So there's there's so many different aspects of this where cross contamination could have taken place, where DNA testing wasn't verified, or where Rosalio himself was also at my brother's home. All of those create a tremendous amount of reasonable doubt behind the single speck of DNA evidence. Outside of that, the timeline doesn't work. Furthermore, there's exculpatory evidence, the DNA of someone that was not my brother's, my brother, that they had found at the crime scene that definitely handled that cell phone and put it in
Question:
the freezer.
Was there more DNA on the cell phone than they discovered in the van?
No, they had only two alleles on the cell phone, so it wasn't a large enough profile to actually run it against the database, the criminal database. So you need a larger specimen to be able to narrow it down. But you might be able to get someone else's DNA, test it, and
Sure.
see if it matches those two
Or
alleles.
get it to where you can't rule them out. It's not enough
Exactly.
to say, but you can say it's possible.
Yeah.
Um, so just to clarify, are you saying that the only actual physical evidence of any kind was the single piece of DNA?
Yeah, that's the only spec, the only thing that they ever presented that connected him to this crime. The only physical evidence. There was none other than that. They claimed that there was bleach smell. One police officer said that he thought he smelled bleach in the back of the van, but then the crime lab experts said that there was no smell of bleach. When they showed the pictures of the van, it was very clear that it was never cleaned. Like all of those things, that it doesn't add up to what the story was that the prosecutor told. There was no other actual physical evidence that connected my brother to Rosalie Gutierrezs. The only thing that they had found was stuff that they opined and tried to spin as him doing things, prepping for a murder. They never had a plan. They never had any letters or any recorded anything that indicated that he had the intent of this crime. What they had was a file on his computer listed as Rosalio Gutierrez, where he had looked up the man, looked up who he spent his time with, maybe, and then looked up his criminal history to see what type of person was going to be around his children, as well as 32 recorded phone calls. I think that was the number of videos that were in a folder on his computer. That, as one of the detectives had testified to, was primarily a man and a woman, mostly arguing about their children. And it was tremendously disingenuous that to present it like he was stalking when all he was collecting was relevant information to bring to a family court case to present to a judge to say, Your Honor, on this date and time, this is what she said. Your Honor, this is the type of person that she's bringing into our children's lives. This is why I want placement for my children, and why I believe that I need to have a larger role in their life. And and that is a very important distinction for the type of man that my brother is. It was about that. It had nothing to do with whether or not she was seeing other guys. And to my understanding, there was other guys. He never gave me the name of anyone else, but he was aware that there were other people. She testified to one person, but I had heard of multiple people that she had spent quality time with, that he was under the impression that she was seeing on the side. So for
Well,
him
I'm going to
to
flip it and then now. We're saying why you don't think he did. What do you think actually happened?
well, I mean, so Rosalie Gutierrez had texted Sadie about Plan B. Plan B was to beat the living crap out of my brother and maybe break one of his legs. That was in their text message exchanges, and he and Sadie had exchanged a few messages about this, where he said, "I won't do it unless you tell me to," and she said, "Poppy knows snitch," and then he said, delete these text messages, and she did, which implies some level of implication where she agreed to him doing these acts or arranging this act, which is disturbing. Furthermore, she had a burner phone that she picked up from her best friend Rebecca, and then on the Monday before Rosalio disappeared, Rebecca had texted Sadie saying that it will begin. She had misspelled begin. It will begin in a week. You won't know where, when, or how. And that text message is also suspicious. In what
But
happened,
that's
I don't
violence
know.
towards Zach, though. Not
Correct,
so. What
but I don't.
happened with Rosalio?
But I'm not sure. But you have suspicious text messages surrounding
Sure.
what this exchange was. Was it a mistake? Was the wrong address given? I don't know. Was it Rosalio calling in a favor from someone that he thought would go, commit an act of violence against my brother? That they showed up and he owed them money, or they wanted more money than he had in his pocket, and then they beat the living daylights out of him because he didn't pony up. I don't know. I don't know. I wasn't there, and I didn't. They never presented any evidence of that. So it's all supposition. It's all theory craft. But the reality is that he had talked about committing some act of violence against my brother, which implied that he at least had some connections to people that were dangerous people. Furthermore, he owed people money, including Michael Campbell, which he had hired somebody else for a tile job on one of the projects that he was working on at a tremendous discount rate, and paid that person before Michael. They had a disagreement about money. Michael even admitted that on the stand, stating that if the only thing they ever got into words about was money. And this was a really interesting thing, because if Rosalio did owe Michael Campbell money for services rendered, for work that Michael had done, for Rosalio, did it come to blows? And then, did it come to blows with a baseball bat? Because Michael Campbell's like 170, 180 pounds and much shorter, to Rosalio, who's 270, 280 at 6 feet tall. So, did he grab the baseball bat and start hitting him with it to try and level the playing field when he got mad at him about not paying the cash?
How big is
It's
Zach?
Zach's about 6'1", and he was 220, 225 at the time. He's
So
lost about 40, 50 pounds since then.
okay, so come. In fairness, he would be physically capable of
Fighting a man that was 50
yes,
pounds or 60 pounds heavier than him.
yeah,
I mean,
especially if the person's
yeah,
out of shape. Absolutely.
yeah, fighting him. But I mean, he had a bad back, and the reality was, like, there's no way that he was going to pick up, a 270-pound man plus the weight of carpeting, plastic, and everything else, and then just fire him and carry him out through the door without any drag marks, no dripping, no bumping any walls or anything else. That doesn't make sense. It's not. It doesn't. The math doesn't check out. It's not realistic.
And
Uh,
what proof is there that Rosalio didn't run?
there's none. They actually never proved that Rosalio was dead. They never brought anyone to the stand that stated that he was dead. They opined that he was, because he disappeared. And for all we know, Rosalio and maybe it was Michael Campbell got into a fight on the night of the 17th. Maybe Michael hit him with a baseball bat, thought that he was still alive, took the money out of his wallet, threw the phone in the freezer, and then left. But after that, Rosario had like gotten up confused, fallen, tried the door, fallen down, bled on the carpet and stuff, and then gotten up after he stopped bleeding, and then literally walked out and left with amnesia after sustaining a head wound. We don't know that didn't happen.
Well, there would be probably blood in the place from that, and isn't that the problem? That you
There
said
would be there was
there's no
blood.
blood at the crime scene. Okay,
Yeah, the crime scene is got blood all over the place. Yeah.
okay.
So there's blood on the couch, like on the back of the couch, like he slumped down on the couch and was leaned over onto one of the back pillows when someone pulled the wallet out from behind him, like out of his back pocket, went through the wallet, grabbed the money, and when they grabbed the money, they grabbed his ID and a credit card or two, and then found the ID and the card, threw it in the freezer with the cell phone, because that's where they were headed anyway, and then they hit the road. that would make sense based on what was shown. It could have been not Michael Campbell, too, realistically. It could have been someone connected with Nerita Macias. She was supposed to be there during that time frame. She was also never investigated. We don't know when her GPS stamps, actually arrived to the crime scene, because she was there during the hypothetical time frame where the state presented this murder took place. But we don't know because the police didn't do their job. So now we have the police with confirmation bias focusing only on my brother because Sadie gave them my brother's name, and we have no idea who else the bad actor could have been. So it's unfortunate, but how do we start over from here other than exonerating my brother and forcing the police to try and reopen this investigation? They're not going to get justice for Rosalio with an innocent man in prison because he didn't commit the crime. He doesn't know where Rosalio is. He can't help the family get that closure. It's not possible because he doesn't know. He wasn't there, and that's the truth.
Okay, now
Uh,
why would somebody put a cell phone in a freezer? I'm just
Well, for a couple of reasons. One being, in case they were afraid of someone listening in. So, did Rosalio himself put it in the freezer? That's possible that he himself put it in the freezer. Maybe, right? Uh,
now on that note, you had mentioned that your brother didn't like having his phone around. He had a flip phone because he suspected technology. Was that brought up against him that
nope.
he would put it in the freezer because he was
Yeah.
afraid of being monitored or afraid of Big Brother on the cell phone?
Never presented, and it wasn't really relevant. They never found his DNA on the phone. So I
Mhm.
mean, the assault would have happened while the cell phone was present. So that that still doesn't make sense. So, um, no matter what, either Rosalio himself put it willingly into the freezer, hypothetically possible, or the assailant put it in the freezer to delay him or to prevent him from calling the police so they could get away.
Hmm. Okay, it's just I didn't know if it was a Faraday cage type of situation or what, but that's
Yeah.
odd. I got a ton of questions to back it up though, so
Yeah,
we'll
we
probably have
never
to
even
crank
talked
them.
about the stalking charge, which is the
No, we
fourth
did in the
charge.
interview
So,
though.
yeah,
We thoroughly talked about
yeah,
the stalking
so
charge in the interview. Folks,
so the
check that one out.
the stalking is right out. And I think there was one thing that I might not have said during the interview is that on the night of the 12th or the 13th, or that they claim that Zach went and followed Sadie down to Rosalie's house where they had the GPS directions played out, where they played those in the courtroom. They never
Mhm.
proved that he approached the house. They never proved that he was actually there. They proved that he drove to Kenosha and then made a call, perhaps based on the directions given. However, on that night, there was a text message exchange between Zach and Sadie that said something along the lines of like whatever they were going to watch or something like that. And Sadie's response was, "You've texted the wrong person." That was her first response. Now, it's important because stalking implies that you are terrified, emotionally distraught, or something along those lines, right? Harassed to an extreme level, fearful of your life, or terrified, uh, and it has to be in the moment, right? In the moment, she texted him and said, "Wrong person, Zach." 12 hours later, 12 hours after that, on the following day, almost midday, she texted him and said, "That was exactly what Rosalio said. Why are you stalking me?" So she was not actually fearful in the moment. She
Mm,
waited until the next day to even broach the topic with him, and then started accusing him of stalking her, which is odd because it does not fulfill stalking.
mhm. Okay.
Anyway, go on.
Let me see. Junie B. Jones, new member. Thank you very much. And I did get a super checks, so I want to get some priority. If Rosalio was attacked on the 17th, why did no one witness the blood on his door on the 18th?
That's a really good question. They didn't have any evidence or any testimony from even the mail carrier. Rosalio's apartment door was right next to, it was adjacent to all of the mailboxes. So they didn't even present that they questioned the mail carrier to determine whether or not this there was any evidence of there being any splatter or anything like that on the apartment door on the 18th. We have people that testified to hearing loud voices in the apartment, an argument on the 18th at 1300 hours, a woman standing on the patio at 16:16 or 4:16 p.m. And then the diffuser that was still running during the crime scene photography on the 19th, all of which implies that there was someone in the apartment on the 18th doing a cleanup, when perhaps after Rosalio, if Rosalio was still alive or was still alive and left with amnesia, when he walked out, somebody went back to check on him, realized that he was gone, rolled up the carpeting, thinking that there was evidence on it with anything else that might have been related to the assault, gotten rid of that, started the diffuser, and then left because there wasn't anything else that they could do to clean it up. That would be Michael Campbell in what I'm implying,
Mhm.
if that was the case. And maybe Michael Campbell and Erica Saylor went there because she's a brunette woman. I don't know. That's all supposition.
All right, and folks, I see the diffuser coming out a lot. We talked about the diffuser in our interview for a while, so I've got a ton of questions, and time is getting tighter, so I definitely want to get to them. Um, let me see. That was the
That we did
last
that.
one. Oh yeah, we did that one. Question: were any of the police interviews recorded? Was there any body cam footage when they arrived to the apartment?
None presented in the courtroom.
All right. How quickly was the media painting Zach as a guilty party in Rosalio's disappearance, and how long until he was charged with homicide?
It was effectively right after his arrest. I think that some of the first articles that hit mainstream media were around the 20th of May in 2020. So he was arrested on the 19th, and I know that on the 21st of May of 2020, there were articles that were released that connected Zach to the disappearance of Rosalie Gutierrezs with incorrect information in it as well. So they started releasing misinformation to the public as soon as Zach was arrested, and connecting him to the disappearance of Rosalio from effectively day one. So day two, technically, from what I remember, but they had started writing those articles on the 20th. The morning, because he was arrested late on the 19th, so that was the 20th by the time he was even charged, on the early morning hours of the 20th. So that's as soon as he was arrested, they started connecting him to the disappearance, which, I mean, maybe he's being investigated, but they should have been investigating a bunch of other people. Problem is that they didn't. They didn't charge Zach with the homicide until, I believe it was the end of November or early December of 2020. It was about 6.5, 7 months by the time they processed the DNA, processed the van and the DNA, and then came up with the fact that they believed that it could have been Rosalio's blood, that single speck in the back of the van, and that means that they sat on their hands. He just sat in jail on a stalking charge with an inflated bail until December, when they then recharged him with homicide and the disposal of a corpse.
All right, and I guess this is probably on a lighter note. I don't really follow football, but can Jordan Love prove to be an adequate replacement for Aaron Rodgers?
uh, well, let's see. Will he hold the ball as long as Aaron Rodgers does to try and find the perfect pass? We'll see. We'll see. I'll get a lot of flack from Wisconsinites about that, but I enjoyed getting into spirited debates about whether or not Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers was a better quarterback, because Tom Brady throws more interceptions, but Aaron Rodgers holds onto the ball for a lot longer.
Okay. Um, has anyone? Let me see. No, we've kind of gone over this one here. Is there anything you can do to get those alleles found on the phone checked? I think you said you can't because they're too small, right?
Yeah, I think that you would have to collect someone else's DNA and then test it against those two alleles.
Right. That makes sense. Um, to your best understanding, to what extent did they investigate anyone else in connection with Rosalio's disappearance?
I believe that there was a minor investigation into Michael Campbell, but not to the extent that they investigated Zach at all, not even a little bit. that was done primarily by the private detectives. But there was really no one else that they considered a potential perpetrator. They didn't really consider anyone seriously. They didn't even put boots on the ground for that massive wooded lot that's like 3 blocks away from Rosalio's apartment. So there's like a little bit further west of Rosalio's apartment, there's like a 2 or 3 block wide by about 7 or 8 block tall, like north and south tall, section of partially wooded land with a single barn on it, and a gravel driveway that drives back behind it. That would have been a very convenient place to drive back and potentially dispose of evidence. But they literally just searched it with drone footage. They just flew some drones over the top. They never got dogs out. They never put boots on the ground. They never did their jobs. They didn't care to. They went after Zach. They even released the dump because they thought maybe there was evidence that was put in the dumpster that was picked up the morning of the 19th of May, and they released the dump as soon as they heard that there was some carpet missing out of the back of my brother's van. So,
all right, this isn't really a question; it's more of a statement. But I admire your family's support and dedication. Zach is blessed. Stay strong. I guess you know Camille. Kindinelli, was your brother guilty of anything or involved in any other crimes?
well, he pled guilty to driving marijuana across the country in South Dakota. So he was driving through South Dakota, and he had been pulled over for that. Other than that, he hadn't been charged with anything since he was
When
like
you say
18 years
driving
old.
marijuana across, does that mean he was in possession of it, or he was actually in distribution of it? Because there's a difference.
Driving it from the West Coast to somewhere in the Midwest. I'm not sure where, but I know that he had connections in neighboring states where it's legal. I don't know where he was going with it. That's not my wheelhouse of knowledge. But he was pulled over in South Dakota where it's not legal to have marijuana in your possession with over 10 pounds, and they
He had
arrested
over 10
him and
pounds.
over 10 pounds, and
That's
they
a
arrested
lot
him.
of weed, dude.
And that, I mean, it's still just weed, but it was
I know, but it's a lot. I'm
it
just
was
saying.
it was only weed. It's not like he was driving like a tractor trailer of weed. It wasn't that much. So, having whatever it was, it still wasn't like it wasn't something that the federal government needed to
When
get
did that
involved
happen?
in. Oh, did they say that was 2019 in fall of 2019 or something like that?
So not that distant past. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. All
Yeah,
right.
but there was no like opiates, no meth, no heroin, or nothing like it was just marijuana. That was it.
Okay. Did Zach himself seriously want to get on the stand himself at any point during the trial or
Yep,
before then?
absolutely. He and I talked about it a couple of times. He was kind of on the fence about whether or not he should, and unfortunately, we weren't sure if it would even be a good thing because the amount of character assassination that Michael Gravely had already presented in the courtroom, and whether or not he was just going to get up and it was just going to be Michael Gravely trying to take advantage of the situation. There's some stuff that I don't want to discuss about that specifically as to what the rationale and why not to do that. But the reality is that there were some reasons not to, but it was nothing nefarious. It was just that the question is, do you get on the stand and do my grandfather once said that uh, it's better to remain silent and let people think you're an idiot than to open your mouth and remove all doubt.
Mhm.
And so there's some logic in that, in the idea that there is a multitude of different scenarios that would imply reasonable doubt for the situation at hand because the state had done such a poor job presenting their case because they didn't really present evidence. They presented character assassination, and had the jury done their job and really paid attention to evidence instead of whatever crap that was being spun and the lies being told by Michael Gravely, especially in the closing argument, then they would have not come up with guilty. It just wouldn't have happened.
All right. Has anyone been in contact with the Innocence Project?
Yes. Now I believe that he has to lose his first round of appeals before they'll take on the case. So they've got like because they take on so many cases. They have,
Sure.
they have to exhaust all their options before the Innocence
Mhm.
Project takes it on. And because he has the option of a public defender in the first case, they generally wait until after you lose your right to a public defender before
That makes
trying it.
sense. They're more of lost cause.
Yeah,
He's not a lost cause yet.
that's right.
All right. Is there any way you can donate to the cause? Yes, I think somebody's been posting a link in the chat,
Yep,
but there are definitely links. And if you follow that hashtag, I guarantee links are going to come up.
that's right. Yeah, at freezachariahanderson.org. There's links to the petition, a bunch of the interviews, a bunch of information, including the Give, Send, Go.
All right. How much money still has to be raised for things like investigators? Oh, I imagine quite a lot.
A lot of money. So, some of the values that we've heard, we don't know how much it's going to cost for the transcripts. That's a necessity for the trial. So we're trying to figure out how much that's going to cost, but we have to wait for the court for them to come back and tell us how many pages it is, because they charge by page. And by the time they compile the whole thing, then they tell us what the total cost is, and we have to fork over a fat sum of money. That is necessary for the appeal, because legally the transcripts are what are used in the appeal process. So we wait. Uh, Investigators themselves, just a private investigator, just to reinvestigate the case, could cost up to $20,000. Just investigating the jury, to actually go in and do a jury investigation to figure out if there was bias, could take somewhere between $6,000 and $20,000. So it depends on how much time they spend digging and what it's going to take to get to the bottom of all of it. But when by the time you stack all of those up, and then you have to add experts on after that, it's not just the investigators. It's your DNA experts. It's whether or not you're bringing on behavior child psychologists and all these other people that all cost money to retain, to bring in as witnesses for a potential retrial.
And also, just so folks realize, you have the unforeseen, because what one thing the state does have as an advantage is they have an entire police force, they have state labs, they have whatever, so they can run something through a lab or come up with something else, and then you've got to cough up money in order to counter it. They're not going to just do it for you. So
That's right.
there's a ton of things that will just come up. You might have to hire a legal expert about a particular point of law that's coming up in a appeal, or hire blah blah blah. It's a
Yep.
giant money pit, from what
And
I understand.
and let's not forget that every piece of evidence that we've retest costs money.
Mhm.
So every single time that we have to retest a piece of evidence, or we test for DNA for a piece of evidence that the state didn't test, it costs us money. So all of that stuff, it all costs money. So that's why we have the Give, Send, Go. That's why, as
Now,
grateful as we are that we've hit 15, we definitely need as much as people can lend to support.
now, though, on that note, just because a lot of people will want to know this, let's say that it explodes and it becomes $1 million at Give, Send, Go, and you are successful. What will happen with the excess of money?
I would I would try and put that towards other people wrongly convicted.
Mhm.
I'm trying to set up a nonprofit, something for my brother to do when he gets out. It's something that he really believes in, and the corruption in the system is something that he's experienced firsthand. So very very similarly to what the exoneration, the Innocence Project does, to
Mhm.
work to try and expose these kinds of injustices. And I would want to see it go to other people that are in similar situations where they've been wrongly accused and then railroaded by misconduct by a prosecutor and bias by a judge.
Okay. Um, Solomon, if you were on Zach's defense team, what would you have done differently?
The closing argument, without a doubt. The
Okay.
the the entire case that the state made was an emotional appeal. It was character assassination, and it was an attempt to appeal emotionally to the jury. Uh, Even though Kirk is a fantastic attorney, he was pragmatic, logical, and to the letter of the law in his closing argument. That very specifically sunk the boat. I believe that was one of the biggest issues. Had he stood there and explained to the jury that the timeline didn't work, that all of the things that I've cited, that the DNA evidence is not is explainable in different ways, and all of those things, is if he had stood there and given that as a speech at the end as his closing argument, then I believe that my brother would have walked a free man.
Somebody in the chat, I'm looking down there, saying that essentially, are you saying you would have preferred if they gave an argument similar to what you did earlier in this particular video when you said the 4 points, 1, 2, 3, 4,
Yep.
and just breaking it down?
Yep. And why he's not guilty of them. Absolutely.
Okay. Matthew Self with the super chat. Thank you very much. Anytime you can show a police investigation wasn't executed to the fullest extent to preserve evidence, the case should automatically be thrown out. The state has the burden and the resources the accused shouldn't pay. I mean, I agree with the sentiment, and I think that's what would feel just. Unfortunately, I don't think the system works that way. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way. They don't care. They got their conviction. I agree with you. It would be better. It would be just if that was the how we approach this. But unfortunately, now the burden of proof becomes his in exonerating himself, which is a little bit backwards. But once he's exonerated, then he
only
can sue
partially
everyone.
because he couldn't do the Denny, because that would seem to be him trying to carry a burden of proof. I didn't do it; he did. Isn't that the basis of the Denny?
That is one of the things you have to provide in the Denny motion, and the reason why is because they don't want like some fantastic theory that's impossible, aliens or whatever it is that swoop in and did it. But I mean, I argue that that's also irrational, because no jury is going to listen to that and say, well, that's believable. You want to provide something that's realistic, plausible, and presented in evidence. And if you're not allowed to do that, if you're gate kept by the judge to not allow and not allowed to present it, I think that's a violation of his right to defend himself. But that's up to the judge to decide, and frankly up to the appellate court to review and decide whether or not Judge Schrader made the right call.
All right. Question: why do you think why would hiring PIs also be? I'm confused by the question. I'm thinking you're saying why wouldn't
friends and family?
Why wouldn't they be beneficial to the friends and family? Do you think you're okay? So
yeah, I mean, the rationale is that if we can hire someone that can actually find the person that committed this crime, then Rosalio's family can have closure on what happened here. Not only do we get to exonerate Zach based on the lack of evidence, or the overwhelming mountain of evidence that doesn't connect him to the crime, but then we have someone that actually perpetrated the crime, that Rosalio's family, his children, his mother, like all of his loved ones, can recognize as the person that committed this crime, and they can actually get closure. They can potentially find Rosalio's remains if he's passed away, or find out where he went or what happened to him, some sort of closure on this disappearance. And it's likely that the man is dead. It's likely that he's deceased, but unfortunately, there's reasonable doubt. There's the possibility that he's not, and because of that, it's impossible, or it should not be possible, to have convicted Zach for homicide. And that's the reality of it. Until you actually perform an investigation and you determine absolutely that this person is decedent, he is still listed as a missing person. That's not how this works. You can't just imagine someone dead and then get the death certificate and move on with your life.
All right, now I'm confused by this one. This is Gone Jerry, and this is Gone Jerry 3. I'm not sure how many Gone Jerrys there are.
At least 3, I guess.
I guess. Why do you think no jurors have spoken out?
I don't know. I don't know if they're just cloistered so much that they're not recognizing the amount of injustice that they served, or if maybe they've seen some of the coverage where some of the criticism and discussion of the facts have come full circle. But It's really hard to say. I mean, are they ashamed of the decision that they made based on a tremendous lack of evidence and putting an innocent man in prison for the rest of his life? God, I hope so. But only time will tell. If maybe they just don't engage in this forum, and they haven't been paying attention. That's also possible. Maybe they just washed their hands of it because they couldn't wait for it to be done, and then continued on with their lives.
All right. Angel Australia. Is the witness at Rosalio's apartment complex who changed the date from the 18th to the 17th 2 years later being investigated?
No.
All right.
Nope. Never investigated.
Do you think it would be helpful to other people to write letters to the Wisconsin Department of Justice or other governing bodies?
Maybe, yeah. So elected officials, when hearing from constituents or hearing massive outcry, public outcry, take issues a little more seriously.
Especially in Wisconsin, though. Like writing to them from Texas is not as powerful as a large amount of people in Wisconsin writing to them. Just want to point that out.
That's why I use the word constituents. That
Mhm.
is true. Though a large number of people writing them about the innocence of the case may bring their attention to it, even if they're not from Wisconsin. But they
True.
will take it more seriously if you're a constituent. If you're a resident of Wisconsin, especially, please do write the Wisconsin Attorney General. The Wisconsin Attorney General has the power to review the case at hand, to determine whether or not Michael Gravely had executed the law improperly, or if he was doing anything improper during the case, like mouthing along to witness testimony, which was caught on camera, or tampering with witness testimony, like with potentially Marquand Washington, or with anyone else that he mouthed along with, or which is a defrauding testimony, by the way, which is an issue with the court going into appeals, or even making himself a witness in the case. Anything that he had done improperly during the proceedings of this case would be under the scrutiny of the Attorney General, and up to the Attorney General to potentially make motion for sanction. We might be able to get the Attorney General to agree with our appeal if he reviews it, and having the state of Wisconsin behind the Attorney General trying to vouch for my brother's innocence in this appeals process makes a big difference. So please do, yes, please absolutely write the Wisconsin Attorney General.
By
I
the
believe
way,
that
if you want to be as effective as possible,
Mhm.
how you do it makes a huge difference.
Yes,
Dropping an email might get somebody to blink. However, if you write a letter, copying its contents, send it certified to them, and then you can publish your letter that you wrote. And if there's a lot of people who are publishing their letters that they wrote and publishing whatever the response or lack of response is, that is far more powerful. They tend
yeah,
to take actual letters that are written and certified far more seriously because nobody does that anymore. It's
yeah,
almost shocking. Now, think about it. When was the last time you got a physical letter from somebody?
yeah. I mean, I get them from Zach now, if it means anything
Well,
to you,
but
but
you wouldn't. I promise you
but I
wouldn't.
wouldn't otherwise.
Yeah, you would get emails or texts. But
Yeah,
I just want to point that out because people, I don't think they realize it. But when you actually write a certified letter, you send it, there's a copy, then it's kind of putting people on notice. You're serious about this. You do want a response. You do care. Anyway,
yeah,
sorry.
yeah. That's great advice. You're absolutely right, Eric. Thank you.
Now, let me see. Back to Jerry Gone. How are
Gone,
many Jerry Gone
gone,
Jerry's?
Jerry.
Let me see. Nobody writes in the chat. Question: why do you think they placed a gag order between Zach and Nerida?
Narita Macias.
Nerida. Sorry.
Narita Macias. That's Nettie,
Thank you.
the woman that showed up to Rosalio's the night that he disappeared.
Okay.
And the only thing that I can assume, the only reason that they would place that gag order is because her original testimony, her original statement to police, provided the description of a large black woman and a younger Hispanic man as being the only two people that she saw going in and out of the apartment building that she believed was Rosalie Gutierrezs. So Rosalio's apartment, she was hypothetically parked out in front of, and she only saw these two people, which actually did not fit Zach's description whatsoever, which also implied his innocence.
Hmm.
So if there's any reason why the district attorney wanted there to be a gag order between Zach and Narita, it was because she had actually given a statement that still implied Zach's innocence, and so they were trying to prevent any discussion at all between Zach and anyone that might have implicated his innocence and or removed their ability to continue to charge him, which is with his daughter and with Sadie.
All right. And
With Josh and me, it was to isolate him and make sure that he would emotionally break and maybe confess to the crime.
okay. And Gone Jerry again. Gone Jerry's been on it in this whole time.
Yeah, really firing me up.
No, definitely, definitely. And I'm getting down to the last few folks. So Holly Moore is probably going to be my stopping point. I'm just letting you know. And that's a few down. Can you speculate why the lights were turned off, the screen door and blinds were closed, and there were tools in front of his sliding door? Who would do that if they were bolting from a crime?
I mean, it sounds like a methodical cleanup more than it sounds like a dash for the door. I mean, the fact that everything was shut down, the carpet's removed, that there's a tool belt there that
But there was
wasn't,
blood everywhere.
and yeah, right, there's blood on the carpet that they couldn't clean up. But like I said, that the rug, why is the rug wrapped up and missing? Was it to remove Rosalio himself, or was it to
Mm.
remove just like I said, just like the implements of the assault, anything that might have implied any kind of guilt, and then you would close the blinds and try and make your way out. You don't have the key to the apartment, so
Mm.
you leave it locked from the inside of the main door, and then you just conveniently slip out the patio door. That's why that in my mind, that's why a woman was there on the afternoon of the 18th. She was a lookout. She wasn't there to like ask the time specifically. She just was asking the time, maybe as a way of casually making a statement to someone, just like, oh, what time is it? I'm just standing out here, to make it look less nefarious.
All right. And El Marie 07. No body, no Rosalio father to build a DNA profile. Blood at scene is 100% Rosalio. You could
I
probably
believe that the
do that.
blood on the scene is tested to be 100% Rosalio's. And I mean, there's some other issues of that I don't think I'm allowed to talk about in the public forum, but I have reason to believe that all of the testing came back to confirm that it was 100% Rosalio. Every specimen that they tested, and I don't know that they even tested all the specimens and all the splash and splatter patterns.
Okay, fair enough. This is a good one. Question: if a jury were to watch this interview, what message to them would you say?
Innocent until proven guilty. What that really means. Really, it's not innocent until proven guilty. You don't think the man who's accused or the woman that's accused is guilty going into a trial. You have to think of them as your brother, your uncle, your son. You have to think about them as a member of your family and believe in their innocence and hold the state accountable to prove to you that they committed this act. That is so important and lost on so many of our citizens, so many people that don't understand how this works. You must prove beyond all reasonable doubt. That means everything and anything that might have occurred, it has to be absolutely this as the only option that could have possibly occurred to rule that someone is guilty. Not that they probably did it, not that they maybe did it, not that they're a dick, so you want to put them in prison for it. That the crime that they're accused of they must be absolutely guilty. That was not done in this case.
Okay, I have a suggestion. It might be an odd one. I would encourage them to watch the trial footage to see the entire trial, including what they were not able to see while they were on the jury.
That's true too. Yeah, that's a good message for them. Because there was a lot of stuff that was with jagging them in and out of the courtroom that they missed. But there's some stuff, and a lot of stuff they got it absolutely wrong in this. It's tragedy.
All right. Do you think Michael Campbell could have planted some of the quote evidence found and pointed to Zach? Well, there was no evidence.
I mean, there's really no evidence. Did Michael Campbell have access to his van when he was on the property? I don't know. Is it possible that he was there, shook Zach's hand or something after he was at the crime scene?
I'm going to say no. I'm going to speculate no, just right out, because if he's involved and he wants to plant evidence, I would think I would get a blood sample and just swipe it, or something more than such a minor bit of DNA that's being described that you can't even say is blood. I would think, like a smear or something.
Yeah,
100 ways to do it.
Yeah, I mean, if he was going to plant evidence, then he
or
could
the
have,
cell phone, throw that in the van, or if he did it or something.
like he drove to Zach's property, he could have gotten out and like dropped something in the bushes, something like that might have been, covered in Rosalio's DNA. Like I don't know, that it doesn't seem plausible. It highly unlikely. Let's go with
that. Would you push to have legislation changed to absolve immunity for judges and prosecutors?
Not completely, but partially, yes. If you, just like being accused of a crime, it should be a crime to suppress information, and to lie to the court, to defraud the court. For these to do these things, it should be criminal, and judges and prosecutors need to be tried for that. That should be a criminal thing, and you have to prove it that they did it. Don't get me wrong; it must be proven. But the reality is that more of our trials need to be on camera. We need to record more of them to keep them honest, and we need to make sure that they're held accountable for their misdeeds. Dishonesty in the court of law, taking away someone's freedom, someone's life, whether it be life in prison or the death penalty. If you're able to do that with no consequence for suppressing exonerating information or dirty courtroom tactics like they deployed in my brother's case, if you can't play the game on the up and up to make sure that you are absolutely proving with an unlimited budget that the state has, then you should be held accountable for your misdeed. 100%.
All right. Question: can Zach see his kids now that the trial's over? Well, not yet.
I mean, yes, technically. So there's no gag order. There's no order that would prevent him from doing so. The only thing that he would have to deal with is Sadie. Sadie has total custody. She's got legal and physical custody of the children. She has the ability to deny their ability to see, speak to, like video chat or anything with Zach.
Okay. And then the last is a super chat from Holly Moore. Holly is making the statement: not guilty. Zach is innocent. Free Zachariah Anderson. And I think that wraps it up. Sadly, I mean, obviously, we could probably go for 6 hours, and there'll be more and more and more questions. But
I mean,
I hope.
I appreciate the fact that so many people did come and engage and ask some really good questions, things that really should be talked about.
And on that note, would you mind looking at this video from time to time later, and perhaps people who were not able to attend it live because of jobs, obligations, etc., if they were to put questions in the comments? Do you think you might be able to occasionally select some of them? I'm not going to force you to do all of them, but an occasional one that, that's a good question, and maybe type in the comments an answer.
Yeah, I would love to. I think that there's a lot of questions out there. I implore everybody to come and join the Facebook group, the Free Zachariah Anderson. Facebook group, not the single profile. That's a little different, but our Facebook group, we've got a lot of great people. We got over 1,100 people in our group, a lot of which are willing to answer some questions. Just try and be respectful when you ask the questions. A lot of people are very passionate about Zach's innocence in this case. So just keep an open mind. Go in there, ask some questions for clarification. We're all willing to give you the answers that you seek. As answer to the best of our ability, to cite trial footage and anything that might need to be done to really drive that home, because people have scoured this trial front to back repeatedly and pulled footage from different witnesses, what exactly was said, and why Zach is innocent. There's very 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 strong evidence in the trial that actually indicates that he did not commit this crime.
And by the way, on that note, folks, I don't mean to leave you out, because a lot of you have a ton of knowledge too that you could share. So if you see comments or you make comments and you have ideas, feel free to answer or give your opinion, because you've seen the trial, or you may have particular professional or personal experience or expertise that can shed light to this situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Share this video. Share videos like it. Share some of the interviews that I've given. Real questions that have been answered or asked and answered in trial breakdown. This is an injustice, and I think Rob from Law and Lumber said it very well, that prosecutorial misconduct happens every day. It happens all across our nation. It's not unique to Wisconsin. It's not unique at all. If people are put in prison all the time for crimes that they didn't commit. And we need to hold our justice system to a higher standard. This is very important. So understand that this could be you. It could be someone you love. All it takes is the right circumstance, and then they're going to frame you for whatever crime that they want to anyway, because they don't have any consequence to executing the law improperly, or trying to manipulate evidence to tell a tale that isn't exactly what happened, to try and put you behind bars.
All right. Well, on that note, thank you very much, and
Thank you.
hopefully you're successful.